Okay, here we have the Portabook by KingJim, and it's a very unique laptop. They fold up like this. Fold up like that. Like that. You got like these ports in the back. USB, headphone, HDMI, controller. It just connects like that. 8-inch screen, Intel Atom, 2 gigs of RAM, Office Mobile, 91,000 yen, which means it's about $860 in US currency. It's a little bit expensive. Yeah, that's Portabook by KingJim. Interesting. Hey guys, how's it going? Today I have something special for you guys. It's another UMPC unboxing, and this is a UMPC a lot of you might not have heard about because it's actually from Japan, and it's Japan only. This is the KingJim Portabook, released in 2016, and I'm actually pretty excited about this because we don't see many Japanese UMPCs anymore. Japan was the one who came out, in my opinion, with the most creative designs, right? The Toshibas, the Sony Vaio UX, Sony Vaio P, the Fujitsu's, right? A lot of those original UMPC designs actually came from Japan. And these days, the only UMPCs that we see are pretty much from China, right? The One Mix, the GPD, those are all from China, and they pretty much look similar to each other. So in my opinion, I think Japan makes more original, more creative designs. And I'm actually kind of excited to see this one. Those of you who have been on my channel for a while, if you go back to 2016, I actually went to Japan. I went to Tokyo in the Akihabara district, and I visited some of the electronic stores there. And in one of those stores, I saw this computer. This is back in 2016, so this computer is actually kind of old, but still, I think it's kind of unique. It's the KingJim Portabook, and I saw it on display. I think they were selling it for about like $900 US. Whatever the equivalent was in yen. So I thought it was like way too expensive for the time because this was an Intel Atom powered, basically a netbook, right? So I didn't buy it that time, but now I found it on eBay for much cheaper. So I managed to snag it off of eBay, and here we are, the KingJim Portabook. So let's go with this computer. This is an 8-inch computer. So actually, let's see what's in here first. I'm actually quite impressed. This is pretty much a new unboxing. Yeah, it doesn't look like this computer's ever been really used. So this computer actually came with an Office 365 subscription. So I'm not going to show that to you guys, but it has a Microsoft Office 365 Japanese subscription. And yeah, did not expect that, but it came with that. And this is the user's guide for the KingJim Portabook. Obviously, it's all going to be Japanese since this was never released in Western markets. I don't think it was ever exported outside of Japan even. Okay, quick start guide. Well, it's funny because this is in English, right? And then of course the instructions are all in Japanese. But that's fine because I don't think we'll need to use the instructions. It's a computer, so I'm pretty sure I know how to operate it. It runs Windows 10. I'm pretty sure I know how to use it. Okay, so this comes with a micro USB charging cable. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? A micro USB charging cable. So it's interesting. He provided me this as well. So he gave me a kind of mobile broadband dongle thing without any instructions on how to use it. Okay, or this could be just a USB key. I don't know. I guess we'll have to check it out. Yeah. All right, and that's it. That's all that's in this box here. Fairly simple box. There's yeah, this is the actual model number, the XMC10. Although I don't think this company, KingJim, I don't think they make any other computer products. This might be their only one. I could be wrong. Of course, I'm not Japanese, so I don't deal with KingJim products very often, but I've only ever heard of this one. Anyways, let's take a look at the computer itself. All right, this is a interesting UMPC. Okay, so first of all, it is pretty thick. So this design kind of reminds me of an old netbook from the late 2000s, just based on the thickness and the size. What's interesting is that even though this is called a Portabook and the company is called KingJim, there's absolutely no branding whatsoever, like none on the lid, and then on the bottom there's absolutely nothing as well. So it's like a completely brandless design. At least on the outside there's absolutely no branding whatsoever, and the ports seem to be all hidden, interestingly enough. So there's no ports on this side. On this side we have the on button right here on the bottom, and then we have a full-size SD card slot. Even though this says micro SD, it's actually a full-size SD card slot right here. And this is a ventilation, I believe. This is also ventilation. I believe all the ports are actually on the back, if memory serves me correct, when I was handling this in the Akihabara shop. So this is actually a cover, I think. So I think this, we can actually pull this down. Here we go. Yeah. So this is where all the ports are. We have a headphone jack, USB port, full-size USB-A, full-size HDMI, a full-size VGA port, which is pretty important in Japan, I guess, since most of the Japanese notebooks I noticed, the Vaio, the Fujitsu, the Panasonic, they keep the VGA port. So I'm guessing the VGA port is still pretty important in Japan. This is interesting. Micro USB charging for a laptop. I've never seen that before, right? You've seen USB-C charging for laptops. This is the first time I've seen micro USB charging. So that's interesting. Usually you would use micro USB for your phone, right? Or even tablets back then. But this is the first time I've seen it for a laptop. That's cool. All right, this thing, it's like a fingerprint magnet up here. All right, let's open it up. You guys ready? This is a pretty unique design. All right, look at that. You know what this is? This is like the IBM ThinkPad butterfly keyboard. Yes. You remember the butterfly keyboard? You open it up and then the keyboard kind of expands out like this automatically. Well, this isn't quite as cool as that because it's not automatic or anything. So you still got to manually do this, but essentially you do like that. You put that into place and you have a full-size keyboard inside an 8-inch laptop or chassis. So that's pretty interesting, right? So it's not exactly automatic like with the IBM butterfly keyboard. It doesn't automatically expand out like that. You do have to kind of push on it like this, but it is pretty nice. So this is a unique design I've not seen since the IBM butterfly. So not many notebook manufacturers do this, but it allows you to fit a full-size keyboard, including this huge ass inner button right here, which is actually kind of popular among European and Asian keyboards. I'm guessing this is a European style enter key. US has the rectangular enter key. Then you have the optical track point nub right here, and then you have your left and right click and your scroll right here, or your middle click. And there's some like specific Japanese keyboard things, like there's a Japanese button here for, I'm guessing, switching between your input characters, your kanji, I think, and you know, your Japanese characters. There's some other keys here. I'm not quite sure what they do. I don't read Japanese, but some key here, some key here, some key here. I'm not quite sure what they do. I guess I'll have to find out. There's a airplane mode button, kind of interesting. A yen button. This is kind of specific to Japan. Yeah, pretty interesting. All right. Well, this is a 8-inch display. The resolution is, I believe, 1280 by 800, which means it's kind of a 16:10 aspect ratio, I believe. So that's kind of interesting. 16:10. We usually don't see that outside of MacBooks. And we have a webcam right here, which seems to be just a basic webcam. And I can't, weird thing about this laptop is I can't push it down farther than this. So I guess I'm used to modern day Ultrabooks being able to push down the full 180, or maybe just because I'm used to convertibles. But this is kind of a really limited, yeah, this is kind of limited viewing angle right here. This is a pretty unique design. I know some people are going to look at this and say, wow, it looks like someone made a Frankenstein machine. They stuck an Apple Magic Keyboard onto an IBM ThinkPad and called it a day. And I'm inclined to agree. I mean, this looks really weird. I mean, they could have at least colored this black just to be more in line with the color of the notebook. Ooh, and we do have the Portabook branding right here, which is the only, this is the only logo or writing we see. Oh, I think we do see something here as well. Okay, so we can barely make this out. KingJim. Let me see if we get this close. Yeah, we can barely make this out. KingJim Portabook. Okay, they have their branding. It's very, very subtle, but it's here. Nothing on the lid. So, yeah, it does look weird. I wish that the keyboard was the same color as the laptop itself, because that would have been more consistent. Just having this white keyboard, you know, with this black laptop, yeah, it feels kind of out of place. But maybe that's just me. The keyboard does offer some pretty good travel though. Just clicking on it. The space bar is a little bit short. I think this is to make room for these Japanese specific keys right here. Yeah, the space bar is a little bit small, and other than that, I do like the bigger enter key. I wish more US keyboards would have that. It does offer you a better typing experience than most netbooks because of the size, right? So let's actually do a comparison here. This is an 8-incher. I have my One Mix Yoga 3 right here. So I think the size of the KingJim Portabook here is probably more akin to the GPD P2 Max, which I don't have. And I don't have it because I think the One Mix Yoga, in my video that I did, I decided that it was better for me. And it is more portable. But I think this size is very, very similar to the iPad mini with a bridge keyboard, or GPD P2 Max. And those are 8.9 inches and 7.9 inches, I believe. So very close to this 8-incher. Another comparison I could do is this is my 10.5-inch iPad Pro with the bridge keyboard. So you can kind of see the size difference here. So this is the iPad Pro 10.5 with the bridge keyboard. This is the size of the KingJim Portabook, and then this is the size of the One Mix Yoga 3. So yeah, would be interesting to have a P2 Max to compare, but I'm guessing an iPad mini or a GPD P2 Max will be very similar to this size. So that's kind of where it is. And let's actually boot it up. Okay, so I'm charging it with a micro USB cable. You can see there's actually a charging indicator light right here. So let's turn it on. A weird spot for a power button on the underside. I don't think I've ever seen a notebook with a power button in that area before. All right, come on, Japanese Windows. Show me what you got. All right, and this is not a touch screen, so I can't do anything there. This keyboard's really interesting because it's almost like it doesn't really connect to the computer at all, right? It's like it's floating on top of this chassis, right? There's like no circuitry or anything connecting this keyboard to the computer. It's almost like they pasted a Bluetooth keyboard onto this this chassis and it just called it a day, which includes a track point. So that's interesting, right? It's almost like it's a separate keyboard that's kind of just pasted onto this laptop. So I wonder how that really works. I mean, I know it's not Bluetooth, so I wonder how that works. Anyways, all right, so I've logged into the computer now, and we can just check the specs from here. So even though it's in Japanese, you guys can kind of see what the specs are. So yeah, it's running Windows 10, and the CPU is a Intel Atom X7Z8700 at 1.6 gigahertz. This is very similar to the CPU that was on the GPD Pocket 1, the first version of the GPD Pocket. So that's a computer from, I think, the same year, 2016, and 2 gigs of RAM, which is very anemic. Even compared to the GPD Pocket, I think the GPD Pocket had at least 4 gigs of RAM and can go up to 8 gigs. And I think this only has a 32 gigabyte hard drive or SSD here. Yeah, see, it's 27 gigs formatted, 11 gigs free. So yeah, this is a very anemic computer. Like, it's hard to believe this came out in 2016. It's like 2 gigs of RAM is something you would find in 2010, like 10 years ago, right? And only 32 gigs, you know, of storage space. That's also something that's very, you know, late 2000s netbookish. So I feel like, okay, the Intel Atom processor, that's definitely a little bit newer than the Intel Atoms that you got back in the day. Was it the N450? I remember that one. That was really slow. The Intel Atoms on the Sony VIO-Ps, you know, those were really slow processors. So this is at least a little bit better than that, the Cherry Trail processor. But still, like, even compared to the GPD Pocket that was released the same year, that one was faster, I think, had more RAM, had more storage space. So even by 2016 standards, this would have been a pretty anemic computer. And for the price that they were selling, like, they were selling this for $900 brand new. Like, it's no wonder it stayed in Japan, right? Like, I can't imagine, like, the GPD was a better deal. The One Mix Yoga 1 was a better deal than this, probably. For this computer, just should not have sold for that price. So I'm glad I got it much cheaper than that. I definitely would not have paid full price for that. But it is kind of a unique oddity, right? This keyboard design. That's really the only thing super unique about this computer. Otherwise, if you have the full-size ports on the back, I guess that's something that the modern-day UMPCs don't have. Is like, if you for some reason you need a VGA port, or you want a full-size HDMI port, or you want a full-size SD card slot, and this computer is the way to go for modern-day UMPCs, I guess, because these days you have micro SD, I guess, and you don't have any VGA anymore, and you have mini HDMI or micro HDMI probably, but you have USB-C, right? Which is, I think if you have Thunderbolt 3, you can probably do all of that. So yeah, this is a collector's only computer. So being that I'm a UMPC collector, that's why I got it. For those of you who want a computer of this size and you want a better keyboard than the one in the GPD Pocket or One Mix Yoga, you can get the P2 Max. Just get the GPD P2 Max. I think that's going to be a better computer than this. Of course, the keyboard is not quite as wide. This is supposedly a 12-inch keyboard. One you would find on a 12-inch laptop, on a 8-inch laptop. So it's you're not going to get as wide of a keyboard as you get here on the P2 Max, but you will definitely get a better computing experience. I mean, you can just tell how, like, outdated this design is, right? The screen can't even go back past here, right? It's like I have to lift it up like this to even see what's going on. And the bezels here, massive bezels. You do have full-size ports, which is nice, but that's really the only things I can see going for the Portabook. Is the only reasons you would get this is if you really want this wide keyboard, then you have it, and if you really need these full-size ports, then you have it as well. Yeah, otherwise I would say the GPD P2 Max is better, and it's also kind of bulky as well. This thing's fairly light at 1.8 pounds, but the P2 Max is even lighter at 1.6 pounds. So if you don't have to have Windows 10, then you can also opt for the iPad mini plus a bridge keyboard, which is about the same footprint as well, except it's a lot slimmer. It's also going to be a lot faster because this runs an outdated Intel Atom processor. The GPD P2 Max runs a Core M3, I believe, which is pretty decent. And the iPad mini, of course, is pretty speedy as well, given that, you know, iPad OS is pretty optimized. So yeah, I would say that's the KingJim Portabook for you guys. I wouldn't buy it unless you're a UMPC collector like me. Otherwise, I think the iPad mini plus a Bluetooth keyboard, or the GVD P2 Max would probably be better for the same size. And that's it. It's a nice oddity from Japan though. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, recently I've begun to install a few different operating systems on different devices I've had, just to shift things around, because I'm looking for something different these days, something to do. And I've installed Sailfish OS and Lineage OS onto my phones, so that was pretty cool. And now I've begun to think about my laptops as well. So I have a few spare laptops. I was thinking about changing it up and installing Linux flavors onto them. So this is my KingJim Portabook. I've already done a video on it. I don't know how many of you have seen it, but it is a pretty unique computer. So as you can see, the keyboard looks very unique. It is a kind of an IBM butterfly style keyboard in that it kind of collapses around the chassis like that. So basically, when you want to fold up the computer, you just collapse it like that, and then you can expand it into a 12-inch. This is a 8-inch UMPC / netbook type computer, but you can expand the keyboard into like a 12-inch keyboard once it's open. So this is pretty unique. It is a very obscure computer. First of all, it's made by a company called KingJim, which is usually, it's a Japanese company that's usually well known for making stationaries. So they don't even make computers in the first place. I think this was the only computer they actually released. But yeah, it's only in Japan. I had to get it imported from Japan. It's a very, very weak computer, even by the standards at the time. I think it was released in 2016. And it only has 2 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of flash storage, and running an Intel Cherry Trail, like Atom processor. So it's a very weak computer. And it came installed with the Japanese version of Windows 10. So I thought, maybe there's a way that I could experiment with this computer a little bit. It's kind of going to be the guinea pig because of the fact that it is a very weak, anemic PC that could probably take Linux, probably needs Linux actually, because Windows is very bloated and it'll probably be very slow running Windows anyways. So I think Linux would actually suit it better. So I ended up installing Ubuntu onto it, which is a flavor of Ubuntu that uses the KDE Plasma desktop instead of the GNOME desktop environment that Ubuntu usually uses. So those of you who are into Linux, you know, Ubuntu is one of the most popular flavors of Linux out there. And then furthermore, there's different flavors of Ubuntu onto that, right? So Kubuntu is like one of the flavors of Ubuntu. So I just decided to use Kubuntu, and let me show you guys how that turned out. So basically, I'm going to start up this computer, and you guys can see it is running Kubuntu. So I managed to install it with only one major issue actually, and that's kind of surprising given the fact that this computer is one of the most obscure computers that you can get, right? And I actually did not expect all the drivers and everything to just work out of the box. So the good news is that almost everything worked out of the box except for the Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi, I could not figure out how to fix this issue. So at first, the Wi-Fi wasn't working at all. And when I ran all the commands on the terminal, you know, I Googled the issue and I tried all the different solutions. Nothing worked. So I tried to install a different version of Linux, right? So I thought maybe if I try Linux Mint or something different, then maybe the Wi-Fi would work, but it didn't work either. So I booted it up into Linux Mint, and the Wi-Fi adapter wasn't being detected either. So I couldn't figure out what was wrong. I was about to give up, and then I started to reboot the PC and go back into Ubuntu, and then this message popped up saying that maybe you should disable secure boot. There was some problem with secure boot. So I went into the BIOS and I disabled secure boot, and then I restarted the computer again into Ubuntu, and this time the Wi-Fi started working after that. And I have no idea why the Wi-Fi was fixed by that. So that's a little bit odd to me. Maybe some of you guys with Linux experience can tell me, but I have no idea why disabling the secure boot in the BIOS would fix the Wi-Fi. I don't know, like the Wi-Fi has always been enabled in the BIOS, right? So there's nothing that was changed there. The only thing I changed in the BIOS was disabling the secure boot. That was it. But anyways, I'm glad I finally fixed this issue. So now I finally got the Wi-Fi working. Now everything is pretty much working. So this is Ubuntu for the KingJim Portabook. I mean, that's pretty interesting, right? I don't think anyone else has tried to put an operating system like this onto a device like this, right? Well, maybe some may have, right? Because it is a pretty weak netbook, and I would say for weak computers, it's better to run Linux than to run Windows. Windows requires very heavy specs generally, and it's very bloated. Linux is generally better for netbooks and those kind of computers. That's why when the Asus EE PCs or triple E PCs, when those first came out, they usually ran Linux because they didn't have much storage space and their specs weren't very good. They all ran Intel Atom processors. So basically just like this computer, this is a netbook, right? It runs an Intel Atom, doesn't have a lot of RAM, doesn't have a lot of storage space. So I thought this would be the perfect candidate to upgrade to Linux. So here we are with Ubuntu. And this is actually my first time really using Ubuntu. I've not really used this flavor of Linux before. I've tried out Linux Mint and regular Ubuntu before, vanilla Ubuntu, I guess. But this is my first time using Ubuntu with the KDE Plasma desktop. But yeah, it's pretty cool. You have your favorites here. This is the start menu. Your favorites, your applications, computer, settings right here in folders, and then your history. And then this is our logout settings right here. So it's all pretty cool, nice and clean. I like it. So everything does seem to work, like the track point nub here works fine. The keyboard works fine. I can go to the terminal actually. So this keyboard's pretty special. It looks like an Apple Magic keyboard attached to this computer, but it's actually part of the Portabook. And I'm actually kind of surprised that it just works out of the box because I thought it would need some special drivers or something given how unique it is. And I mean, just the fact that, okay, the track point is part of this keyboard, right? And it's working right now. Everything from the keyboard is working right now. When you fold it into this mode, nothing works. The optical track point nub doesn't work anymore, and the keyboard doesn't work anymore. So there's some mechanical electrical connection here that is activating and deactivating the keyboard. So right now, like even in this halfway mode, it's not working, right? Nothing works in this mode. But somewhere when you get to like around here, then it starts working again. Okay, now it starts working, right? And this is really odd because, yeah, because it's not even fully connected yet, right? And yet it's working right now. So I think somewhere between here and here is when the keyboard actually activates and deactivates. So I don't know exactly the mechanism or the electrical connections or what's going on behind the scenes. It would be cool to see that sometime, but I'm not going to take the computer apart. It is just really interesting how this works on this computer. Okay, so like this doesn't work. Right now it doesn't work. But move it a little bit more and then it works. That's really cool, right? Really interesting. And then it's not even connected at that point. Anyways, yeah, just to show you guys, the keyboard does work here. No drivers required, just works on Linux. Yeah, so the keyboard right now is being detected as a generic 101 key keyboard. It is a Japanese keyboard, so a lot of the keys are not going to work. And a lot of the buttons have shifted around, so I have to get used to this a bit. Yeah, this is quote, right? So yeah, everything works here, keyboard works, and even the shortcuts work as well. So I can adjust the volume here, right? So this is the volume adjustment, mute button. So even the keyboard shortcuts work, at least the ones that are not Japanese exclusive. There's even an airplane mode. I wonder what that one would do here. I guess that doesn't do anything. Oh, that actually deactivates the Wi-Fi. Okay. So this deactivated the Wi-Fi because this was airplane mode, is that right? And then I just re-enabled it. So I guess the airplane mode button is actually a Wi-Fi on and off switch. So that's something to keep in mind. And then there's a Japanese kanji input here. Looks like that really doesn't not do anything here because it just pretends it's a US keyboard. F1, oh, that just suspends the computer, puts it to sleep. This one switches to external screen, right? And then this adjusts the brightness, I believe, which should still work. Yeah, so these shortcuts all work here. This adjusts the brightness. Yeah, I'm actually pretty shocked that most of these shortcuts work as you would expect, actually. So that's cool. Now the Windows button does launch it launches the start menu on Ubuntu. That maps exactly as you would expect. And of course, even this little context menu button here gives you the context menu. These buttons are very Japanese specific buttons, so I don't think they would do anything. But everything else, like the keyboard, just seems to work with Kubuntu, which is great. And then of course you can watch a video here. The audio drivers just came working, which I'm pleasantly surprised by, because I know that for my Wi-Fi, right, it didn't work at first. And that's been actually a common issue for people who are installing Linux onto Intel Cherry Trail or Bay Trail computers. But people have been having audio problems as well with drivers and stuff, but it just has not been happening to me. I think my audio drivers just worked out of the box, which is great, right? So we can listen to some music here as well. I think the speakers just work. All right, so yeah, so the speakers just work. No additional drivers or anything. I didn't need to do anything special for that. That's good. So that's cool. Yeah, so pretty much the only thing I had to really deal with was the Wi-Fi. Okay. Anyways, guys, I just want to show you guys that pretty much everything works with Kubuntu. The Wi-Fi drivers, like I said, that was the only thing that was a problem, but then that got fixed somehow. I still don't know exactly how I fixed it, but now it's fixed, and everything seems to be working. Pretty unique, I would say. I don't think anyone else, well, first of all, who even owns this computer, right? And second of all, who would be crazy enough to put Linux onto a computer like this? Well, I guess I am, right? Or I'm crazy enough or bored enough to do that. But yeah, guys, that's it. That's the KingJim Portabook running Kubuntu. I just wanted to show you guys some of my latest experiments, I guess. And yeah, I guess I would consider that a success so far. This is definitely one of my more unique experiments, is putting Linux onto this really obscure, tiny Japanese netbook. Yeah, that's it. If you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. This is the KingJim Portabook running Kubuntu, the latest version.